Relationship issues?
Relationship talk
On 702.
Don't ask me to say that in sign language. On our relationship feature today, we are talking about something that I think we should talk about more often. Emotional flooding in relationships. Because this often is a result, ends up in people breaking up, people just misunderstanding each other. So we're going to spend this hour on the show just speaking about how we can deal with emotional flooding in relationships. We all deal with sudden, powerful emotions every now and then. And in fact, relationships involve emotional exchanges that can sometimes become overwhelming, right? And one such phenomenon is emotional flooding, the psychological response where you feel emotionally overwhelmed due to intense conflict or perhaps negative interactions. And when you are in this state, you end up saying hurtful things. You end up saying hurtful things out of anger, and you deeply hurt your significant others. How many of us have been in those situations where you are so hurt and so betrayed sometimes that you end up saying things that you know you're going to regret, or things that you end up regretting? And often it's because there was emotional flooding. You were in a state of emotional flooding. And this is one of the biggest barriers to healthy communication in relationships. It can have serious consequences on communication, on trust, on emotional intimacy. And that often leads to disengagement. That's why you end up seeing resentment or even relationship breakdown. And that's why it's important to understand what to do when you feel like there's emotional flooding and you are in that state. Because emotional flooding could be both a cause and a symptom of deeper relational patterns. Maybe you're dealing with deeper issues here, like unresolved trauma, the lack of safety, or maybe you've got challenges with poor communication. So how do disagreements with your partner usually go? Share your experiences with us, and maybe you can ask our guests this morning if that is part of emotional flooding and how do you deal with it. There are some people who are struggling with managing their emotions. So once they get in that point of conflict, they really end up doing and saying things that they end up regretting the next day. And maybe you're listening to us. Your relationship has ended precisely because you were in a state of emotional flooding and you just simply couldn't manage your emotions. And you ended up doing things or saying things that ended up in ending your relationship or your marriage. So that's a question for you. How do disagreements with your partner usually go? Do they often leave you feeling defensive, talking in circles, saying things perhaps that you regret? 011-883-0702 is the number you can dial to join this conversation and to share your experience with us. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. Shelley Lewin is relationship architect, author of Uncomplicated Love, and a couples counselor and relationship coach who's going to guide us through this conversation. Shelley, welcome back to the show. Good morning.
Thank you so much. It's the exact opposite of our last conversation,
right?
Which was us avoiding emotions. So we've gone from one end of the continuum to the exact opposite end.
Let's start with just the foundational information here. When we talk about emotional flooding, what does it look like both psychologically and physiologically?
Okay. Well, I just want to pick up on something that you said, that absolutely it can be one of the biggest threats to a relationship. So we often think of things that like infidelity or becoming disconnected and growing apart, but often it's an overlooked disruptor. And so emotional flooding is that moment when your nervous system gets overwhelmed. And what happens is that instead of responding thoughtfully, you become highly reactive or even overreact. So it can be that you snap, you shut down, you walk away, you say things or do things that you regret. What's really happening under the surface is that your body and brain are really working hard to protect you because it feels very unsafe. So it can be, as you pointed out, psychological, which is you're picking up on a past experience, and you feel unsafe in that moment. But I also want to point to it can be a biological issue, which is hormones. So if you have a lot of cortisol or adrenaline or changes in your estrogen or progesterone, all of those can affect how reactive we are in a moment of stress or disconnection. So it's not only psychological, it can be biological as well.
Yeah. So how is it different though from other strong emotional reactions? Like if someone says, yeah, but I'm just angry, or it's just anxiety in the relationship, like how different is it from like emotional flooding as a phenomenon?
Okay, so if you think of strong emotions, anxiety or anger, they usually have a range of intensity, where emotional flooding isn't just that you're feeling a lot, it's that you are emotionally saturated. So you're so overwhelmed that your ability to think clearly, to listen, or to speak is actually compromised. It's such a physiological stress response. So there's this emotional saturation, like a sponge that only has so much capacity to hold water, and then it just leaks everywhere. So you're emotionally saturated, and so there's this tipping point where the emotional brain takes over and the rational brain goes offline. So you kind of move into this tunnel vision, racing heart. It feels like you're under threat. Even if the conflict is minor, you're so flooded with emotions that you literally can't think. And generally people slip into that fight or flight mode in that scenario.
And please, can you explain what each one looks like? Because there are people who slip into that fight mode. You've got others who slip into that flight mode. And sometimes we just don't understand that about each other when we're in relationships or in marriages.
Yes. So I would say we tend to have one of two responses when we feel that we're under threat. So one is that you move towards the conflict aggressively, like a tiger that moves forward towards the conflict. So that's a fight mode. And you think about a tiger, it becomes vicious, it attacks, it snaps, it's blaming, it's defending, the voice is being raised. You're trying to force a resolution. It's highly charged, aggressive, and can even become violent or very hostile. Okay, that would be fight mode. Flight mode is the opposite response, which is like a tortoise that retreats into its shell. So the flight mode is where you shut down, you withdraw, you go quiet. You're actually trying to escape the situation emotionally and or physically. So you remove yourself and you just run away. So we tend to have one or the other, fight or flight.
Yeah. How common is
Or
flood?
freeze. Some people freeze.
Freeze. They just don't know what to do. How common is flooding in relationships, and how does it hinder communication and even emotional intimacy?
So I'd say it's particularly common if there's a lot of if someone is in very high stress. Okay, if someone or both of the couples don't have tools to self-regulate. So, we live in very uncertain times. So generally speaking, most people in quite stressed state. So if you are in a stressed state, your capacity to respond to a situation is low or limited. Then add to that a level or layer where between the two people, we don't necessarily trust each other, or we don't have the skills to communicate effectively. So what can happen is that we we start to create this dynamic in a relationship where we stop hearing each other. We move into self-preservation mode. We protect ourselves instead of trying to connect. And so what happens is over time, this is going to erode the emotional intimacy and the emotional safety, and couples start walking on eggshells, or they avoid having hard conversations completely. There's not enough safety in the relationship to feel vulnerable. You actually would rather avoid the conversation completely because you just worry it's going to lead to either this extreme hostile fight or flight where the person withdraws completely.
Yeah. Whew. Okay, let's hear from our listeners now on 0727021702. That's the WhatsApp line. You can share your experiences there, or if you have any for Shelley. You can also call us on 011-883-0702. How do you deal with emotional flooding in your marriage, in your relationship? Are you a type of person who you get onto fight mode, or do you slip into flight mode? And how does that affect the relationship? How do disagreements with your partner usually go? There are people who really get so upset, so angry that when they get into this emotional flooding state, they end up saying things that they regret the next day. Or maybe you've got a partner that ends up saying things that really creates even more damage in the relationship. How do you navigate that? How do you help them see that? Let's start with your WhatsApps.
Hi, Clement. I think with me, regardless of what I say when emotions are high, I won't wake up tomorrow and regret what I said, no matter how harsh it came out, because mostly I speak truth. I speak truth no matter how hard it comes out, or how, whether it will hurt the other person or not, but it will be pure truth. The only difference with me is that when I'm wrong, I am quick. I don't even want things to escalate to another level or to tension levels. I apologize immediately. If it's something I need to fix, I fix it, or I start working on fixing it immediately, and I apologize for that. But with her, it's different. The things that always lead to emotions escalating high, leading to tensions and harsh words being thrown out, is the fact that they don't want to admit when they are wrong.
Morning, Clement. Petunia here from Alberton. Wow, I like that topic. It's very, very sensitive. For me, Clement, I've been struggling to resolve my issues with my husband. But, for my side, I started learning who my husband is. And then from there, he also started learning who am I. And then learning yourself, you need to go deep to know the element of a person. How is the person reacting when you do this? Like in a spiritual way, if I can say it like that.
Okay, thank you so much for your WhatsApp. Shelley, let me get your thoughts before I go back to the calls. I mean, does it help to get to a point where you just learn how your partner fights, and then that sort of at least helps how to manage situations, especially when you get into that emotional flooding state?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I was going to say, if you are in a relationship with someone who floods emotionally, is to recognize this as a pattern of behavior, and then to create strategies or tactics for living with someone who is like that. So the person who's doing the flooding is often flooding because they don't feel safe. And so in them not feeling safe, this is the response their body has. So in that moment, you want to figure out, how do I help this person, assure them that you're safe, that I'm not going to be abandoning you, and to find tactics and strategies to help them to calm down. And Also, the person who does the flooding needs to know themselves so that they know in the moment, how can I, if I can in the moment, become more aware? Because obviously the impact of this when I flood is going to have a terrible consequence on my partner and on the relationship. And I need to be accountable for that. So how can I navigate these situations? So both people need to understand each other about how we can best actually navigate. And perhaps you can prepare in advance with a plan and experiment and try different approaches when you understand each other better.
Pete, you're calling us from Tembisa. Good morning.
Morning, Clement, and morning to your guest.
Sure.
Yeah. So my concern here, Clement, is, whenever I have a conflict with my partner, I struggle to control my emotions. I get to a point where I'm extremely angry that sometimes I even say things that I would regret. So a recent case, we had an argument with my partner yesterday. It was in the morning. So what I did is I switched off almost like the whole day. We were not talking. I wasn't like checking up on her because what I do usually, I would call her often at work just to check how she's doing and how her day is going. But yesterday I decided to just withdraw after we had an argument in the morning. Then in the afternoon, in fact in the evening, she was upset with the fact that I kept quiet the whole day. And then she referred to that as emotional abuse from my part, to say, how do I keep quiet the whole day without checking up on her? And my response was that I'm trying to avoid a situation where I don't know what to say after we've had an argument. Because most of the time when we argue, it would drag, and we would just go in circles before we could even resolve the issue. So yesterday I just felt like I needed to just switch off a bit, and then later on, then we can communicate. So I just want to know, how do I navigate situations like that where my partner and I, we have an argument? How do I resolve a problem there and then without me switching off? Because yesterday she complained with the fact that it makes her feel like I don't care about her, I don't love her, and she referred to it as more like emotional abuse on my part. Because, so I just want to understand, how do I resolve an issue where it's a heated argument? Is it okay to withdraw, just to switch off a bit, to reflect, or what do I do in
to avoid
situation?
Yeah, because when you're withdrawing in your context, Pete, you're saying you're trying to avoid more damage, because you end up then, if the fight continues, you end up saying things that you regret. Okay, I'll get Shelley to respond to that. But are you guys fine now, Pete?
Yeah, we are trying to. We are trying. We are getting there. We are getting there. At least we spoke last night, and this morning. We are getting there. Yes.
Send her a message now and say, "Oh, I just spoke to Clement about you. I miss you so much." Okay, and get some flowers later, Pete. Go home with some flowers. Pete in Tembisa, thank you for your call. Shelley?
So I just want to make a distinction between flooding and stonewalling. Okay. So flooding, if you're flooding and you move into flight mode where you withdraw and retreat, okay, it's almost an involuntary shutdown. It's a protective reaction to the overwhelm. Stonewalling, on the other hand, is where you intentionally distance yourself, and it's used as a way to punish, avoid, or control a situation. So it sounds like in that example that he gave that he was stonewalling by choosing to ignore his partner. But out of sheer, let's say, lack of knowing what to do next, how to handle this next, how do I resolve this? So I'm going to say repair is everything. That the person who's had the emotional flooding could potentially, in an ideal world, is going to say in the moment, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I've reacted in a way I'm not proud of. And I really want us to talk about this. Right now, I can't do that. So right now, what I need is to just have some space. I need to self-regulate. I need to calm my central nervous system. Please just give me some time. As soon as I've calmed down and I feel like I can talk in a way that's going to be healthy for us, I will definitely get back to you. I'm not avoiding you. I just need some time to self-regulate. So what you're doing is you're letting the partner know that this is a healthy response. You're doing this to show care for the person. You're doing this to actually honor the relationship. You're not doing it to punish them. And to let them know, right, so let's say a couple of hours later, then you come back and you say, thank you for your patience. Thank you for giving me the space. So can we unpack what happened in that moment? So the idea is that you go, when you are in a calm state, you then unpack and explore what happened and bring curiosity. So I would say the biggest gift you can bring in a situation like that is it's not about being defensive and trying to, well, I got that way because you did this, blame. You're just going to go straight back into an argument and conflict. So you really want to bring curiosity to try and understand, why do I feel so unsafe? What is going on between us? And what do I need what do I need that I didn't get? Or what can we do differently next time? So if you can try and get to the root and the meaning behind the flooding, not just to focus on that moment, you can then build a relationship that's not only safe, but also resilient.
Yeah. And how do partners then rebuild trust and emotional connection after an episode of flooding, which has caused hurt? Maybe there were hurtful words that were said. How do you go back to just replenishing?
Well, exactly that. So you need to make amends. You need to apologize. You need to take ownership for the fact that you have just caused a rupture. And that, so there's research at the Gottman Institute. And what they've shown is that every time you say something, we'll call it like an emotional bank account. So if you say something that hurts somebody, in order to neutralize that, it's not that you need to say one nice thing and it's neutralized. It's a ratio of 5-1. So if you do or say something hurtful, in order to just neutralize it, you need to say 5 nice things. So you just said to Pete, flowers, buy flowers, apologize, take ownership for it, send a message. You've got to do 5 things of kindness, acts of kindness, or bids to connect, like to reach out, to show that you are remorseful about what happened.
That's on top of the apology.
Just to reach a neutral point.
Yeah.
Correct. Exactly. So you do need to apologize. And I would say one of the best things you can do to show your partner is that you care, is that you try to figure out how you can self-regulate. So I want you to see this flooding as the sponge is leaking. The sponge it's saturated. You are so filled with emotion. Where is all that emotion coming from? What is going on for you? That is where you need to, as Petunia was saying, is to really understand, who am I? Go deep to understand what is going on for me. Why am I so distressed and feeling like I'm so filled with such strong emotion that I get so triggered easily, that I have, people say that they have, someone's pushing my buttons. Well, if someone's pushing your buttons, you probably have buttons that are easily pushable. So you need to find out, why do you have such easily pushable buttons? That's for you to take on and understand.
Yeah. We often talk about triggers, but that's my trigger when you mention that, when you touch that button. But are we actually doing work to realize, why is that a trigger? Why is that button so sensitive?
Exactly.
Because then that really helps us understand fully the situation. Let's get the latest in Eyewitness News headlines. When we come back, we'll continue this important conversation about emotional flooding. How do you deal with emotional flooding in your relationship? in your marriage when you're so overwhelmed with emotions that you just end up either saying bad things, terrible things that you are going to regret much later, or you just shut down? How do you manage your emotions?
Relationship issues
Relationship talk.
on 702.
All right, 23 minutes before 12 o'clock. Let's continue with our conversation around emotional flooding on our relationship feature this morning. Let's go to your WhatsApp voice notes.
Hi, Clement. How's it? It's KG here. Clement, I think and believe, in any situation, it is best when there's concerns that you address them. And again, it also depends on how you address them. Because if the both of you are very high and screaming and shouting, you end up saying things that you cannot take back the next day. So I think in a heated situation, the best way is for the other person to, I don't know, maybe go for some fresh air. It works for me, Clement, because two volcanoes are going to cause a disaster. So rather, if the situation is heated, take some fresh air and talk it out when the moods are down and when the heads are cooled.
Hi, Clement. It's Petrus here. Thank you for an interesting topic. I just wanted to ask here about this thing of flooding and about all these terms, but it seems to be about where someone stops communicating for whatsoever reason. I'm not sure if I'm getting it right, but is it a man's responsibility to always check up on the woman, to always check how she feels, to always initiate communication? So if a man doesn't initiate, then there is an assumption that things are not going well. I see it's quite common. I've experienced that in my relationship where I stopped communicating. The person stopped communicating for 2 weeks. And at the end of the day, she said, I'm the one to blame.
Yeah. Ooh, Shelley?
Well, there were two points there. So KG gave some great advice there, this idea that two volcanoes cause absolute disaster, and I would agree. And perhaps at some point in this conversation, I can share with you a strategy called STOP, S-T-O-P, which is a very specific strategy for emotional flooding. But then the second question, which was around, it isn't about people that stop communicating. It's about our capacity to communicate. So when you are filled with so much emotion, the part of your brain that does the thinking and the logic shuts down. You actually don't have capacity to communicate effectively, and you move into this very unhealthy state of self-preservation, self-protective. I don't care about you. I don't care about the relationship. And it's all about me and taking care of me and feeling safe. So we do withdraw or we get aggressive when we feel that we're in that state. And of course, that has an impact on our communication. The question is it a man's responsibility to initiate? No, I don't think it's any one person's responsibility. I think that it depends on what are the dynamics. Who is the person doing the emotional flooding? So if one person, whether it's male or female, does and says things that are very hurtful, the consequence of that is going to be that, the partner is left completely hurt, heartbroken, angry even, and they're going to need to have time to process their emotions. So both people are going to need to have time to calm down and to go and have some fresh air and to self-regulate and return to the conversation when they're feeling calm again in order to figure out what happened. It's not about the explosion. It's about what is underneath the explosion. Why is the explosion happening? So it's almost like there's two topics. there's the topic of what is causing this, and there's the topic of the way that it's showing up with this explosion isn't helpful. It's an additional challenge to the relationship. So it's the way in which it's being handled is not helping.
Yeah. Here's another one.
Hi, Clement.
Hi, Clement. Anonymous here. Listen, what I wanted to ask your guest there is, what becomes now of people that do not want to extend the hand of apology to one another? Because there could be a serious fight between the couple. Then next thing, somehow the problem would work itself out, but it still leaves a layer built in one another. How do we best address that?
Yeah. Shelley?
It's such a simple thing. An apology is such a simple thing that's free, that makes such a big difference. And really what it boils down to is it's showing the person that I have remorse for what happened, that I don't like what happened. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry and sad. You might not feel sorry and sad for being angry, for example, like your anger might be, valid, but the way in which you expressed your anger is the problem. So you can be angry. All feelings are valid, but not all behaviors are. So I can feel angry and I can let my partner know I'm upset about something. I don't like it. There's been an injustice and I want us to sort this out. That's one way of expressing anger. Or I can be angry, scream, shout, hit the person, throw the things out on the street. There are many ways we express anger. And what we're talking about here is in emotional flooding is that you have lost control. Your central nervous system cannot cope. You have emotional saturation. And if you cannot own the fact and be remorseful that you have lost control, that your central nervous system, if you cannot own that, I think that what will happen is your relationship, the intimacy will just diminish and diminish and diminish because it's not safe to be vulnerable. And intimacy is all around our willingness and capacity to be vulnerable with somebody. So it's going to have a very severe long-term effect on the relationship.
Jenny, you are in Johannesburg. Hi.
How are you, Clement?
Sharp, man. Go ahead.
I'm good. Clement, this is a great topic. I broke up with my girlfriend over the weekend because of this very same topic, where I always feel that when I have to address something, she always brushes me off. She just doesn't want to talk, to a point where on Friday, if I may say, we had this thing that let's address what's really bothering us. And then I said, when I started the topic, was I really apologize for everything that I have done that really hurt you in this relationship. But I would like us to maybe start on the clean slate and let's deal with each other with everything that is happening now, moving forward. And immediately she went back to all the things we're struggling with. But I said the problem is you are not communicating. You are just brushing me away. I feel you're getting annoyed when I talk to you. And she actually affirms that, yes, you annoy me. You are a man that talks too much. If you can learn to be quiet. And immediately I just switched off. And I felt very disrespected. I didn't know how I felt. And the following day I just said, you know what, I think we are both overwhelmed with this relationship and we are tired. I can't do this anymore. And that was it. I don't know if I have the problem or I just don't know at this moment. Like I'm losing myself in this entire thing because I don't know how to react. She's always defensive, even on a simple thing. She will be very defensive.
Mm.
And it has been like that. I don't know if I need therapy. I just don't know.
Mm. Yeah, Jenny, thank you for calling us, and I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, yeah, especially that the fact that you guys have broken up. Shelley, any advice for Jenny?
I would just like to acknowledge that he has this clear understanding how important communication is in a partnership. That if you think about it, it's really, if you have a partner in life, it's a team. You're a team. So any team that wants to survive and thrive and do well, whether you're a team in sports, playing tennis together in doubles, or you're on a bicycle together, whatever team you're on, it's a partnership. You have to talk to each other. Think of it like a dance. You step onto the dance floor and you stand on your partner's toe. You go, oh, I'm sorry, and then the partner says, I'm going to take a bigger step. Please join me on taking a bigger step. You cannot learn to dance together better or partner with each other if you're not communicating. And if someone is saying to you that they're not willing to communicate and just is asking you to keep quiet, there's nowhere to go with that. How is the relationship ever going to get smoother and easier if you're not able or willing to communicate? So in my mind, I think that it's probably, although it's painful, it probably wouldn't have gone well, staying together with someone who refuses to communicate and to express their preferences, what they like, what they don't like, what they need, what they don't need, what works for them, what's serving them, what's going to make me happy, what will bring out the best of me, what brings out the worst in me. So that's just this endless communication that needs to happen so that two people can dance through life better together.
Oh, yeah. Let me just wrap up with some of the messages here. Anonymous says, hi, Clement. Me and my wife cannot hold a conversation. When I speak to her and there's an uncomfortable topic, we end up fighting. She can't seem to remove emotions from a topic and deal with facts. It's really, really frustrating. Another one says, Clement, what you and your guest are discussing there is real and it's so accurate. My wife is fight and I'm flight. She is neurodivergent and refuses to get help to regulate. I am constantly walking on eggshells because anything could set her off. I'm exhausted. It's only been a year of marriage. Oof, yeah, what a tough one there. And then another one says, Clement, can I remain anonymous here because I know the person listens to the show. Me and my partner never had money issues when I used to work and we communicate well, but now since I've been unemployed for over a year now, he has somewhat cut me off money-related issues. I just see when things happen, and when I raise such concerns, he says that I'm just overreacting and I always look for the fight. But recently we had been connecting emotionally. I think it's because of my unemployment status. He just has this I don't care attitude, especially in fights. Even when I have concerns, he doesn't even care. He would do as he pleases. Yo, Tabiso, you are in Centurion. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Clement. How are you doing, man?
Sure, man. Go ahead.
Good. Thanks for the great show and great topic. As I was saying to your producers, this is something that I'm currently going through right now. Where I've just sort of pulled away from my partner because we had a fight, and I feel very overwhelmed, and it's just I don't know how to handle it. And I'm somebody who suffers a lot from mental health issues like anxiety and disorder, and depression. So, and my approach has always been, let's communicate so we can avoid situations. But time and time again, I find myself where we are fighting about the same things that I feel like could have been avoided. And then I sort of retract. So I don't know if that is the right way. I'm not looking for is it right or wrong, but what's the best thing for me to do in this situation? Do I pull away or do, because it feels to me like they struggle communicating. So I don't know if it's a thing that I can do anything about, or must I expect them to do something about it and communicate better. Yeah.
Thabiso, thank you so much for that. Shelley, we've got about 30 seconds left. If you can respond to Thabiso's question, please.
Okay, I would just say anytime there's an issue that's on repeat is that you haven't actually really gotten to the root of it. So my recommendation would be to really spend some time journaling, thinking about what it is that is really going on here, what is going on for me, and both of you could potentially become more skillful in communication. Think of it as a skill. And it is something that if we don't have the skill, if you don't have the skill and the techniques to play good tennis, it's not going to be a fun game. And the same in relationships. If you don't have the skill for communication, it's not going to be as much fun as what it could be.
Yeah. Shelley, thank you so much for always guiding us through these important conversations. I really appreciate it. Shelley Lewin, a relationship architect, author of Uncomplicated Love. Go check out the book. She's a couples counselor and relationship coach. 8 minutes before 12.